Module 1, Logic, Structuring a Story that is Organized and Systematic. Every strong message always begins with a clear logical structure. In this module, we will learn how to structure a story that is not only interesting, but also easy to understand because it follows the natural way the human brain works. Our brain has two sides that serve different functions. The left brain works logically, analytically, and systematically. It tries to understand the meaning of sequences, cause and effect relationships, and sentence structure. Meanwhile, the right brain plays a role in understanding emotional meaning, visual context, and nuances from the story we convey. In public speaking, a good message always begins by touching the audience's logic first. We need to ensure that our message makes sense to the left brain, that every idea has a connected and rational flow. Only after that do we take the message across the bridge to the right brain, so the audience can feel its meaning. This module will invite you to understand how the brain actually processes information from logic to meaning, why this sequence of thinking is important to build clarity in a message, how to distinguish the functions of the left and right brain in understanding a narrative, and how to use systematic story structuring methods so that every word spoken can be understood logically and flow naturally. All these things will be discussed in depth in Module 1, Logic in Public Speaking. As the main foundation for building presentations that are structured, clear, and meaningful. The human brain has a very orderly way of working when receiving information. When someone speaks or delivers a message, our brain does not immediately respond emotionally. It tries to understand the logic first. Does this message make sense? Is there a structure of thought in it? After logic is processed, visuals take the next role. Visuals help the brain form a concrete image of what is heard, making information easier to remember and reinforcing meaning. That is why proper visualization can accelerate audience understanding. And only after logic and visuals are organized in the mind does emotion begin to get involved. Emotion is the final element that connects meaning with the audience's personal experience. This is the moment when a message is not only understood, but also felt. With this sequence, logic, visual, emotion, the message becomes more complete. The brain understands the reason, the eyes capture the meaning, and the heart receives the message with full awareness. This is why this order of thinking is so important in public speaking using the Taxonomy Table. Brain flow in processing information. In public speaking, every message we deliver goes through a sequential thought process in the audience's brain. This process does not happen randomly, but follows the natural flow of how humans understand the world. First, the message is received by the left brain. This part works like an analyst, examining the logic, structure, and cause and effect relationships of the words we speak. The left brain ensures that our message makes sense, is organized, and has a rationally acceptable basis. If the logic is unclear, then the right brain will not proceed to process the information further. After the logic is accepted, then the right brain takes over. This is where the message is finalized and visualized, translated into mental images, emotions, and deeper meaning. The right brain adds color, feeling, and emotional context to the logical message, so the audience not only understands the content of the message, but also feels its meaning. So, the sequence is always the same. Right arrow from logic towards emotion. We build the structure of the message in the left brain, then bring it to life in the right brain. This is what makes communication feel complete, logical in thought, and meaningful in feeling. Determining the topic from a visualization perspective. One of the common mistakes in public speaking is choosing a topic simply because it interests the speaker, rather than because it is easy for the audience to understand. In fact, in the process of crafting a message, the correct train of thought begins with our ability to visualize the topic. Before deciding on the theme you want to deliver, ask yourself one simple question. Can I clearly visualize this topic? If the answer is yes, then that topic has a strong potential to be understood and remembered by the audience. Because something that can be visualized, whether it's an image, an event, a symbol, or a feeling, will be more easily processed by the brain. Conversely, if the topic is too abstract and difficult to illustrate, then the message you deliver will quickly fade in the minds of the listeners. In other words, visualization is the bridge between ideas and understanding. A topic that can be visualized will form a mental picture in the audience's minds, making them not just hear, but also see and feel its meaning. Therefore, in every presentation or speech planning, start with a topic that can be visualized. Then arrange the logic of your explanation. And finally, add emotion to strengthen the connection. This is the systematic train of thought in choosing a topic. From the idea that can be seen, to a message that is understood, to a meaning that is felt. A topic that can be seen will be easier to remember. Because when a topic can be visualized, it becomes more believable. And when the audience believes in what they imagine, our message becomes stronger and more memorable. In short, finding the right topic can and should be visualized. It's not just about logic, but about how to bring an idea to life in the audience's imagination. The visualization principle. In public speaking, every idea needs its own visual space. The more topics we present, the more visuals are needed so the audience can clearly understand our message. Blue square, one topic equals one visualization. When there is only one main idea, we can focus on one image, one analogy, or one concrete example that reinforces the message. A single visual helps the audience's brain build a sharp, undivided understanding. Yellow square, two topics equals two visualizations. When we want to compare two ideas or two sides of something, use two balanced visuals. Two images help the audience see the differences or relationships between them. Without proper visuals, such comparisons are difficult to grasp using words alone. Red square, three topics equals three visualizations. If there are three main points, present three types of visuals. These could be a sequence of steps, three parts of a system, or three real examples. Tiered visualizations like this help the audience's brain follow our thought flow logically and structurally. In other words, visualization works like a map for the audience's mind. One image explains one idea. Two images build comparisons. And three images create a flow that is easy to follow. The more ideas you want to deliver, the more important it is to provide visual anchors, a focal point that keeps the message from getting lost amidst complexity. Because ultimately, visualization is not just about pictures, but the way we guide the audience's brain to understand. Effective public speaking moves from logic to emotion. Effective public speaking always starts from logic and ends with emotion. Because speaking in front of people is not just about conveying words, but guiding the audience's way of thinking and feeling. When we begin with logic, we help the audience understand why something matters. We provide structure, explanations, and reasons that make sense to them. Logic makes our message reasonable. But logic alone is not enough. Once the logic is accepted, that's when emotion takes over. Emotion gives soul to our message, making the audience not only understand, but also be moved. This is where stories, facial expressions, tone of voice, and empathy play a major role. Emotion bridges understanding and action. That's why the flow of effective public speaking always moves from logic to emotion. We open the audience's minds with logic, then touch their hearts with emotion. From I understand to I feel. And finally to I believe. Public speaking is not just about speaking intelligently, but about how our logical message can be brought to life by feeling, so that the audience not only remembers, but also feels its meaning. From concrete to abstract. Each topic has a different level of difficulty to explain. And one of the determining factors is how concrete or abstract the topic is. The more concrete the topic, the easier it is for the audience to understand it. Because the human brain works faster when it can see something directly. For example, when we talk about compass, chain, or battery, the audience can immediately imagine them. They know their shape, color, and function. Concrete topics give a clear footing for logic. On the other hand, the more abstract a topic is, the harder it is to explain. Topics like justice, trust, or leadership don't have a definite visual form. They can only be understood through concepts, analogies, or stories. This is where the speaker's role becomes important, to concretize the abstract. To turn difficult ideas into images the audience's mind can see. So in public speaking, before composing your message, ask yourself, how concrete is the topic I'm going to talk about? Because the more concrete the topic, the easier it is to explain. And the more abstract, the bigger the challenge to make the audience understand. That's why great speakers are not only able to think in concepts, but also able to translate concepts into forms that can be visualized. The key is simple. Make the invisible visible. Turn abstract ideas into something that can be seen, imagined, and felt. Creating a structured message with the taxonomy table. When we speak in public, often our ideas seem to jump around. We know what we want to convey, but it's difficult to organize them so the audience can easily follow our train of thought. This is where the importance of logical structure in delivering a message comes in. A strong message always has a clear sequence of thought, from basic facts to the relationships between concepts to how to apply them in practice. And to help organize them systematically, we use the taxonomy table. The taxonomy table helps us map the content of a message based on three main types of knowledge. Factual knowledge. These are basic facts, data, or concrete objects that become the story's foundation. This answers the question, what are we talking about? Conceptual knowledge. This is the understanding of the relationships between ideas, patterns, or theories behind the topic. This answers the question, how does this work? Procedural knowledge. These are the steps, processes, or procedures on how to apply the concept in real practice. This answers the question, how do you do it? By understanding these three layers, we can organize messages from the most concrete to the more complex. The audience is encouraged to understand objects or facts, then meaning and relationships, and finally, how to apply them in their own context. This structure is what makes our message logical, systematic, and easy to follow. No longer speaking in a scattered way, but building understanding step by step, from knowing, to understanding, to doing. So, the taxonomy table is not just an academic tool, but a thinking map that can help anyone, including speakers, deliver messages more clearly, purposefully, and meaningfully. Determining a topic with the taxonomy table. Before someone starts speaking in public, the first step to take is not to think about the opening sentence, voice intonation, or even hand gestures. The first step is to determine the topic, what we actually want to talk about. The topic is the foundation of the entire message. If the foundation is strong, the flow of the speech will be solid and easy to follow. However, if the foundation is vague, our message will lose direction. For that reason, we use Bloom's The Taxonomy Table approach as a thinking guide. This technique helps us see the topic not just as the title of a speech, but as a structure of knowledge that we can explain systematically. Every topic, whatever it is, from science, business, to motivation, certainly contains three main aspects of knowledge. Factual knowledge, concrete and real things that can be observed. For example, data, objects, events, or examples in the real world. This answers the question, what are the facts? Conceptual knowledge, the relationship between ideas, theories, or principles that explain why something happens. This answers the question, how does this work? Procedural knowledge, the steps or methods to apply that knowledge in real practice. This answers the question, how is it done? These three aspects always exist in every topic, whether it is concrete or abstract. And the more concrete the topic is, the easier it is to explain. The more it can be visualized, the quicker the audience will understand it. So, before speaking in public, make sure you already know. Does my topic already have these three layers, facts, concepts, and procedures? Because when our topic is structured according to the taxonomy table framework, the message delivered will not only be logical, but also easy for the audience to understand, remember, and apply. Getting to know concrete objects in public speaking. Earlier, I talked about concrete topics, or concrete topics/objects, which are the starting point in determining the subject of a speech. But, what exactly is meant by a concrete object? Concrete objects are things that can be seen, touched, felt, even smelled. Something whose existence is real and can be easily visualized, even by a child. Why is this important? Because the human brain understands something that can be visualized concretely more quickly. Concrete objects give a strong logical footing before we discuss more abstract matters. Imagine some simple examples. Compass shows direction. Chain for binding, pulling, lifting, and so on. Gear synchronizes rotation and adjusts speed. Battery, portable energy source. Light bulb light switch, cuts or channels electrical current. Straight ruler for measuring. All these items are examples of factual knowledge of what is real and can be directly identified. However, what's interesting is, each concrete object also possesses conceptual knowledge and procedural knowledge within it. For example, a compass is not just a tool, but also symbolizes consistency in making decisions. Gear is not just a metal object, but also depicts connection between ideas or systems. Battery, a symbol of energy and focus management. Light switch illustrates clarity and decision-making. Ruler is not just a measuring tool, but also a method for assessing and comparing. In other words, one concrete object can become a bridge to deeper understanding, from facts to concepts to ways of application. This is the power of concrete objects in public speaking. From one object, many things can be explored. Getting to know abstract objects and factual knowledge. If previously we have discussed concrete objects, real objects that can be seen and touched, then the opposite is abstract objects. Abstract objects are things that are not physically visible, cannot be touched, have no color, and do not have a definite shape. We can only sense their existence through understanding, experience, or personal interpretation. Because of their invisible nature, it takes more time and effort to visualize them in the mind. And this is where the big challenge lies. Because when abstract visualization is not accurate, everyone can have a different picture of the same thing. Imagine a few examples. Mantelpiece clock time, which cannot be seen but can be felt through change. Light bulb, an idea, which appears in the mind but is hard to explain without concrete examples. Balance scale wisdom, which can only be understood through decisions and actions. Delve freedom, which means something different to everyone. Crossed swords conflict, which is not visible but can be felt in human relationships. Balance scale truth, which can be interpreted from different points of view. All these things are called abstract objects. And all are part of factual knowledge. Because they remain part of the reality we can understand, even if we cannot touch them. In public speaking, talking about abstract things requires higher-level thinking skills. We must turn what is not visible into something that can be visualized through analogies, stories, or symbols that help the audience see the meaning. So, if concrete objects help us explain what is visible, then abstract objects challenge us to explain what is felt and understood. The key is balance. Use the concrete to explain the abstract, and use the abstract to give meaning to the concrete. Exercise, factual knowledge concrete object. Before we move on to the next topic, let's pause for a moment to make sure that you truly understand the concept of factual knowledge, especially in the context of concrete object. Because in this training, understanding is not just about knowing, but being able to transform knowledge into a form that can be explained and visualized. Now, try to think. What topic do I usually present in public? Write down that topic on your practice sheet. If your topic is concrete, try to write down a real object or thing that can help explain that message. Visualize its form. The clearer the visual, the easier it is for the audience to understand your idea. However, if your topic is abstract, then your task is to find a concrete object that most closely represents its meaning. This exercise will help you practice your visual thinking skills, turning unseen ideas into something that can be imagined by the audience. Because in public speaking, a good message is not only heard, but also seen and felt. Understanding conceptual knowledge. After we understand what factual knowledge is, The next step is to go up a level to a deeper form of knowledge, that is, conceptual knowledge. If factual knowledge answers the question what exists, then conceptual knowledge answers the question why does it exist and how does it work. Conceptual knowledge is theory, principle, or relationships between elements that explain how facts work. It is a mindset that connects facts into one meaningful system. In everyday life, every concrete object we know always has a theory or principle behind it. There is not a single thing that is created without a concept explaining its existence. A simple example: satellite, the GPS we use every day, comes from Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. Without that theory, GPS would not be able to calculate the time difference between Earth and satellite. Fork and knife with plate, the hunger we feel, can be explained through Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because physiological needs are the foundation of all human motivation. Invisible microbes and bacteria are explained by germ theory, a theory that revolutionized the world of medicine and modern hygiene. Each of these examples shows that behind something that looks simple, there is always a big concept explaining why and how something works. That is the essence of conceptual knowledge: connecting facts with patterns, principles, and underlying systems of thought. As a public speaker, understanding conceptual knowledge means we do not just mention facts, but are also able to explain the meaning and relationships behind those facts. We help the audience not just to know, but to understand. Exercise: understanding conceptual knowledge. We have discussed that factual knowledge is about what exists and can be directly observed. Now, we will move to the next level, that is, understanding how something works. This is what is called conceptual knowledge. This exercise will help you see the meaning and principles behind the facts. Recall the topic or object you chose in the previous exercise. Now, let's dig deeper. Conceptually, how can that object work? What principles make it function? Through this exercise, you will learn to find the theory or principle behind the facts you present, connect concrete objects with the abstract concepts that explain them, arrange a train of thought so that the audience says, "Oh, so that's how it works." Please fill out the exercise form. Understanding procedural knowledge. After we understand factual knowledge, that is, what is real and exists in the world around us, and conceptual knowledge, that is, why and how those things work, the next step is to understand how to use them systematically. This is what is called procedural knowledge. Procedural knowledge is knowledge of the steps, stages, or workflow that must be carried out so that a concept can be applied correctly. If factual gives us data, and conceptual gives us meaning, then procedural gives us the way to do it. In the context of public speaking, this means how we explain something in a structured and gradual manner, according to a logical sequence that the audience can follow. Imagine when you explain how an object or process works. The audience does not just need to know what and why. They also want to know how the steps are carried out. Procedural knowledge is always related to sequence, stages, and standard operations. It answers the question, how do you do it correctly? As a speaker, when we master procedural knowledge, we do not just explain the concept, but also guide the audience to be able to practice it. This is the third level in the Taxonomy Table, the level where knowledge no longer stops at the mind, but begins to be applied in real action. Now we have arrived at the last part of the knowledge dimension. We already understand what factual knowledge is, about what is real and observable, and also conceptual knowledge, about why it works and what principles underlie it. The last step is procedural knowledge, that is, how something is done in the correct order. Through this exercise, we will learn to examine a topic or object from its procedural side. This means how the process or stages of using the object or topic are carried out according to applicable standards or logic. Try writing your topic or object in the exercise form. 1. What object or topic did you choose? 2. How does it work or what is the principle behind it? 3. What are the correct steps or order for using the object? This exercise will help you build a logical thinking structure from facts, concepts, to application. And this is what makes your presentation not only informative, but also transformative. We have now reached an important point in message design. We have determined what will be discussed, namely, the knowledge dimension. Whether your topic is factual, conceptual, or procedural. The next step is to determine how deeply the topic will be discussed. It is no longer about what is known, but how far that knowledge will be understood and processed by the audience. This is what is called the cognitive process dimension. If the knowledge dimension talks about the content of knowledge, then the cognitive process dimension talks about the depth of understanding. It helps us answer the question: to what level does the audience need to understand this material? Is it enough to just remember the facts? Do they need to understand its meaning? Do they need to be able to apply it in real situations? Or even analyze, evaluate, or create something from the topic? Each level of thinking process will determine a different delivery style. For remember, you only need to explain definitions and examples. For understand, you need to add illustrations and analogies. For apply, you must demonstrate the steps. For analyze and evaluate, you can invite the audience to compare and assess. And for create, you facilitate them to generate new ideas or solutions. So, after you determine the knowledge dimension of the topic you want to deliver, the next step is to determine the target thinking process of the audience. How deeply you want them to understand, and at what level you want your message to be received. Because the main goal of public speaking is not just to make the audience know, but to make them think. When delivering material in public, not everything we plan always goes as we expect. Sometimes we come with high targets, wanting the audience to be able to analyze the topic we present, to compare, assess, and draw logical conclusions. But as we speak, we realize something. The faces of the audience look confused. Their body language indicates they have not reached that level of understanding. In situations like that, a wise speaker does not force things. They lower their target from analyze to understand. They choose to ensure the audience understands first, before inviting them to think further. That is a true form of respect for the audience. On the other hand, sometimes we only aim the material at the understand level, just enough for the audience to know and comprehend. But it turns out, our audience is active and critical. They start asking why, or what if. In moments like that, a careful speaker actually raises the level from understand to analyze or even evaluate. They adjust their delivery to match the audience's level of thinking right before them. And this is what is meant by respect to audience. Not just politeness or emotional empathy, but a form of intellectual appreciation. We honor their way of thinking by adjusting the depth of the message so it can be received comfortably and meaningfully. As speakers, our task is not just to present what's in our heads, but to bring the audience to think together. We do not lower the standard, we adjust the path. Because the main goal is not to show that we know a lot, but to ensure our message truly gets across. We have arrived at the final part of Module 1, which is the last exercise before moving on to the next module. In this section, you will learn to determine your audience's level of thinking. Because in the end, the effectiveness of communication is not only determined by what we convey, but also by how well the audience is able to process our message. Once you have determined the topic or object for discussion in the knowledge dimension, whether it is factual, conceptual, or procedural, the next step is to determine the cognitive level, or the level of thinking process you will use in your delivery. The main question is, to what level do I want my audience to think? This exercise will help you align your message, speaking style, and visualization method according to your audience's thinking abilities. Because a great speaker is not only able to speak clearly, but also able to think like their audience. In this module, you practice 1. Determining the topic and object from the knowledge dimension. 2. Choosing the appropriate level of thinking process from the cognitive process dimension. 3. Adjusting your delivery method so the message can be received perfectly. That way, you are not just arranging a story, but also designing a thinking experience for your audience. Please fill out the practice form first before continuing to Module 2.